Hey, Lordy, look at the time.
Empowered.
Okay, guys, welcome to the M-PWRD podcast. We have a solo episode with myself today. This is our first solo episode of 2024. So we've had a couple of people in over the last few weeks who, some way, shape or form, are involved in education. And we are going to be doing a solo podcast today where I am going to be basically taking a deep dive into some of the education news which is arising. It's not going to be, I'm going to keep it light and try not to make it boring, and also just give my take on some of this information that I've been reading this past week on various websites. And yeah, we'll just kick straight off, just dive into it. So, groundbreaking study shows kids learn better on paper, not screens. Now what? So essentially what this article was saying was that results are getting worse. The average skill comprehension, text comprehension skills of 13-year-olds has declined since before COVID. And they're essentially saying that as a result, kids are learning better in a classroom with teachers who are there to support them and peer learning, people of their own age spurring them on, than they do at home alone in their bedroom whilst their parents are potentially out at work or working in the other room. So it's a big news flash that, staying at home for 2 years and not going out, not speaking to other people your own age, and speaking to a teacher through a screen, which you can essentially pause, mute, hide from, and not have that kind of engagement one-to-one with your tutor, is negatively impacting results. So obviously, as always, groundbreaking study. I don't know how groundbreaking that is, that if you're not spending any time with your teacher and you're seeing them through a screen and then being set stuff to basically employ your own agency to be able to get your work done. And then at the end of that, you're just given the results that you were predicted in your GCSEs, then it's going to be worse. Obviously, there's now backlash on the British government for ever even going into lockdown. It seems like everybody's forgotten that we went into lockdown because of COVID. Did I ever think that it was a good idea to close the country for 2 years and push everything online? No. But also, now after we said, oh yeah, let's all go into lockdown, now after students' results who haven't even been to school, like these kids haven't been to school for 2 years in that period, and we're going, oh, their results are down. That's not groundbreaking, is it? It would be groundbreaking if their results had miraculously went absolutely through the roof by not seeing their teachers ever and not having any peer-to-peer learning. I think it's expected that their results have went down. I think obviously they've came back in. Their social skills are massively impacted. They probably haven't, if you're not in the classroom with your teacher, and these are children as well, this isn't to say that, responsible adults who are doing online learning can't get just as much out of that, because obviously they're incentivized to. Like, these kids are they're sat in their bedroom with their toys, with their devices, with their games. They've probably got an iPad open right next to them if their parents are at work or if their parents aren't in the room. Like, you probably have a fraction of these people's attention at any time. So yeah, now there's pressure on the British government. Rishi Sunak taking heat for lockdowns, which obviously he wasn't the Prime Minister when we went into lockdown, although now he is, so it's his fault. So yeah, they're saying essentially 2023 didn't go to plan. We assumed that after 2 years and 3 prime ministers of change and school being, done at home, that results are worse in these students haven't progressed as much. So that's groundbreaking. Does it suggest that technology isn't going to play a huge part in learning moving forwards? No, absolutely not, because, you know, if implemented correctly and supplemented, I think that's the most important thing. If we supplement the technology to be able to take some of the burden off of teachers, but also bring them into an environment where they can build their, you know, social skills, where they can get used to being with other people, where they can get used to communicating in real life, then, you know, the technology is going to help. Yeah, if you put them in a room for 2 years and tell them that we expect their exam results to be the same, then it's not going to be. But that's the first groundbreaking story. Using a sample of 59 children aged 10 to 12, a team led by Dr. Karen Froud, F-R-O-U-D. What is it, fraud there at first? That would be an unfortunate name. Asked its subjects to read original text in both format while wearing hair nets filled with electrodes that, like, does this even sound legit? Like, we can put hair nets filled with electrodes in and work out how clever these people are. Like, just think about this. If this research was coming out of, you know, Russia, and there was a classroom full of students with hairnets on, with electrodes, and they were, you know, giving us any sort of feedback from that, we'd all be calling bullshit. But yeah, apparently this is how they're doing it. Performed in a laboratory at Teachers College with strict controls, the study used an entirely new method of word association in which children performed single-word semantic judgment tasks after reading the passages. See, I don't even know if any of this really makes sense. But anyway, soon to be published groundbreaking study from neuroscientists at Columbia University. Okay, well, I don't know if this proves that kids learn better on paper, not screens. I think that this proves that children probably learn better when there is an adult in the room who's being paid to teach them. That's probably where students learn better. You know, I definitely think a hybrid approach to learning is best, where you've got some form of learning done digitally so that the students can work at their own pace, and then that being fortified by an actual paid professional who is in the room helping them, giving them guidance, giving them one-to-one support. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I think education is obviously going to change to being more online, especially as people get older. But yeah, I don't know if that headline necessarily means that. So here we go. Shift towards non-traditional education models. Now, I've seen a lot of this, micro schools. So you hear a lot about these micro schools. I hear a lot about them in the US. Small-scale education establishments offering personalized learning experiences are gaining popularity. These schools often employ innovative teaching methods and provide a more intimate, community-oriented learning environment. So, essentially, smaller schools ran by the community, teaching students kind of the curriculum that the community have agreed upon. So, almost like a cluster of homeschooled kids being kind of schooled on a smaller scale by their community in these micro schools. You know, I read something, or I was probably listening to a podcast, about a community where it was like 20, 30 houses, and they'd all like bought these houses together, these group of people who knew each other. It sounds like a cult. And they were kind of homeschooling their kids. Obviously, you know, especially in America, we're seeing complaints of things that parents might not want to creep into the curriculum. So, you know, typically you wouldn't have ideologies passed through your teachers, like those kind of professional boundaries whereby, like, you know, I didn't even know what religion any of my teachers except for my RA teacher was. I certainly didn't know their politics. Not that I would have cared. Not that anybody should care. Like, that person's being paid to teach you English. Like, does it even fucking matter what religion they believe in. Is that going to help them teach you English? But yeah, I think more and more, I think there's an agreement between parents, or there should be, and teaching establishments that the children are going there to learn a curriculum. And as far as possible, the teachers should do their absolute best to teach that curriculum in the most objective fashion and not use the time that they have their students to push any ideology that they have, regardless of whether it's, a left or right-wing ideology. I don't think anybody's suggesting for a second that they would like a out-and-out fascist to be teaching their children and, putting their spin on it. But I just think that, this shift here towards these micro schools is definitely a result of things creeping into the curriculum that parents just don't want to tolerate. And I think that, it's extremely hard to monitor what is being, the way things are being delivered, because there's also a way of delivering the curriculum and give your opinion without actually veering off the curriculum. So I think that there's definitely pushback on that. I think that, we're going to see it more. We're already seeing people feel disenfranchised with the curriculum as it stands. One of the main complaints we get when dealing with students is that their traditional education didn't prepare them for the working world, and especially the way that the world is at the moment in terms of self-employment opportunities, anything to do with tax, anything to do with managing their finances, applying the learnings to real world experience, which is going to help people. So yeah, I think these micro schools are going to continue to rise. And I think probably we're going to see these micro schools, because you can imagine if it's a community who's doing this, then within that community, you would assume that there probably isn't the professionals. You might have 2,000 kids in a school, okay? You've got X amount of PE teachers, you've got X amount of English teachers, maths teachers, geography teachers, but those people have been kind of brought in from far and wide to deliver those specialist subjects. Now, in your kind of micro school in smaller communities, the chances are you're not going to have somebody with a geography degree. You're probably not going to have someone with a geography degree in that community able to deliver level geography to these kids. So that's why I think we could see technology supplemented so that, they have access to higher learning on those specialist subjects without having to, compromise the fact that they want to have this, community-oriented learning environment. So they're not having to let in external ideologies and let in, the traditional schooling model, but they're still able to capitalize on the best learning. And this is something that I'm really, particularly interested in, is that at any time, some of the brightest minds in the world on any particular subject are pumping out hours and hours and hours of free content on their specialist subject. Like, with the best will in the world, there's not going to be a maths teacher at your school who is leading the world in, maths, because realistically, why would they be your teacher if they were at the very, very highest level? However, those people know that by using media channels, they can get a lot of money, earn a lot of money from putting their teaching out, have millions of people watch it and millions of people do their lessons online, and they can capitalize a lot more. So actually, utilizing online, you're going to get just the information that you want, no bullshit, no politics, no anything. You're going to get B, the absolute best people in those subjects teaching that, and C, you're going to still have the community-oriented approach, because the other things that the other people in that community feel comfortable teaching, some of maybe the more finer life skills, they're able to deliver them. So I wouldn't be surprised if you saw more people move to this sort of model. there are already in the UK community-based learning models, especially my brother worked at an Orthodox Jewish school, and they had their own curriculum, community-based, community-funded, taught what they wanted, didn't really give a fuck about Ofsted, obviously based on some of their actual religious beliefs and the things that they taught was contradictory to some of the things that you needed to pass something like the science modules of GCSEs. So, uncompromised in their religious belief and therefore unaffected. And what's Ofsted going to do? Close them down? Are Ofsted going to turf out, 800 Orthodox Jewish students from their school? A, where are they going to go? B, they would just continue doing it anyway, but give even less of a shit about Ofsted. So, it's not going to be like there's any way of stopping it if people want to do it. And then hopefully it should push there to be more, call for improvement in the actual teaching organizations, in the schools, to be like, okay, we're losing students, we're losing funding, because that's what it's about essentially. They lose students, they lose funding. They don't have as many people apply, they don't have as many resources, quality goes down, you start getting worse Ofsteds, it's harder to attract staff. With less funding, you can't put much extra curriculum on. If you can't put extra curriculum on, you attract even less students. So it is really a downward spiral from kids not wanting to go to your school. So I think, things like this could be a big thing. Tackling teacher burnout. A non-profit organisation offers a refreshing alternative to traditional teaching methods through experimental learning. It supports teachers, enhancing their effectiveness and reducing the risk of burnout. With a striking 98% teachers reporting enhanced efficiency. Yeah, teachers are burned out because every single year they have more and more bullshit to do, which has nothing to do with teaching. They've got... Picture the scene, okay? You're a teacher. You have a group of 14-year-olds. 80% of them don't give a shit about your lesson. And you've got a mixed group of 14-year-olds. So, not all schools and not all subjects are broken down into sets. So, your typical STEM style maths, science, usually English is broken down into sets. So you might have, lower, middle, top, you might have 5 sets, whatever it may be. Idea being is that all of the students in that set should have a similar level of ability. Now let's just say you teach a subject which doesn't have sets. So now you've got 30 kids who range from, potentially English being their second or third language and them not having been here for their entire lives. They might have a language barrier that they struggle with. And that's obviously making it difficult to, teach the nuances of that subject. Like there's a lot of terminology which you might have a good concept, you might have a basic concept of how to speak the language, but you might not know, specific terminologies relating to a niche subject. All the way up to, some of those children could be, Russell Group University students, Oxbridge students after they leave school. So you've got, some students might have even learning difficulties. So you might have students in your class who have learning difficulties, all the way up to students who, you should be being pushed. Now, as a teacher, they will be monitored and graded and pressured to simultaneously stretch and challenge the higher end of the achievers in that particular subject, whilst also making sure that they've made accommodation for the lower end of the students and every single student in between. So, and you're supposed to give an individualized learning plan to all 30 of those students. So your responsibility is to give something which is going to be an individual learning plan to 30 students who are all massively varying in their abilities in that particular subject. And realistically, you're going to spend more time doing paperwork and making sure that individual learning plans are there, making sure that advice and guidance sessions are taking place, making sure that work's marked, making sure that, people who finish their work early are being stretched and challenged, whilst simultaneously having to embed, maths and English in all subjects, being able to embed British values, being able to embed safeguarding and prevent. Like, how many plates are you spinning? And then on top of that, you've got to teach design technology. Do you know what I mean? Like that then becomes a secondary responsibility is, teaching, history between 1939 and 1945, whilst also embedding safeguard and prevent. And look, I understand why safeguard and prevent are embedded into these subjects. I understand why we have to embed maths and English. I understand why it's important to stretch and challenge all of these students. I understand why it's important to make sure that the lowest end are being, looked after so that they're getting the best out of it as well. But also, whilst that's all happening, like we said before, 90% of their time is actually spent managing the 10% of the students who don't want to be there at all, who are causing disruption, causing problems. And then you're wondering why teachers are feeling burned out, and you're wondering why they feel like they don't have the resources that they need. You wonder why they feel like it's impossible and they're being buried under paperwork. You're wondering why it's nearly impossible to do these teacher recruitment. Their wages aren't astronomical. They're required to do all of this additional work. They're required to, a lot of the time provide additional curriculum. And these are the people who are supposed to be creating the foundation for society moving forward. Like, no job exists without teachers. They are the basic foundation of every single job is the person who passed on that information. Nobody is born knowing how to draw a house. Do you know what I mean? Nobody is born knowing how to, make something physical for a car. Like, these are all things that have to be learned, and a lot of it stems from teaching. English and maths being embedded totally makes sense because English and maths dominate so much of your life. You literally can't do many things if you don't have a good grasp of, your reading and writing. So yeah, they feel burned out because they're probably going to quit teaching. They can't get people to sign up to be teachers. And then if they do sign up to be teachers, everybody wants to be an agency teacher because they don't have the pressure of the bullshit of having to go through Ofsted. They don't have the pressure of the bullshit of doing all of this advice and guidance and the stretching and challenging and all that sort of thing. And I just think if we want to do all of this and if we want to have individualized learning, then it's going to have to be online. And I'm not saying like go and sit in your room for 2 years like COVID. I'm saying embed technology, have a learning syllabus where there is a hybrid learning method where students can follow along learning materials on their computer, whatever it may be, and then the teacher can be there to support them with the physical. One, it's going to be easier to track. It's going to be easier to stretch and challenge. Oh, the kids finished. There's already a thing on there to stretch and challenge them. Two, their job's going to involve technology. Some of these kids are 11, 12, 13. They're going to start working in 10 years after university. Half of the jobs that they're going to do don't even exist now. You know what I mean? You're preparing them for jobs that don't even exist yet. Like, the jobs that people are doing now didn't exist 10 years ago. Like, how many social media managers were there 10 years ago? That wasn't a job. It was nobody, like, maybe there was a couple, but like, how many people are social media managers now? How many people are content creators now? How many people are working with artificial intelligence now as part of their job? That didn't exist 10 years ago. So we're trying to prepare people for a world that's going to rely more on technology, because if you want to put your eggs in one basket and say that you think that technology is going to play less of a role in people's lives moving forward, then, good luck to you. The push for equity in education. Here we go. Our research indicates, which sounds like I watched a video on TikTok. Our research indicates sounds like I was watching a video on TikTok, but I'm gonna say I read somewhere. Because if you start off by, Spence, you can back this up. If you start off by telling someone, "Oh, I was watching this TikTok," you know what I mean? You can't really be doing that, can you? You have to go like, "Oh, I read somewhere." You know what I mean? You gotta lie. Yeah. You'd be like, "Oh, so I was just reading this scientific journal." No, you watched a video on TikTok, okay? That's where all of your information comes from TikTok and the Joe Rogan Experience. You don't have any original thoughts. You've never had one in your life. Am I right? Yes or yes? Research indicates, i.e. they watched a TikTok video, that impending teacher departures, what did we just talk about, could disproportionately affect low-income families and students of colour. To counteract this, interventions need to be targeted towards retaining teachers in high-poverty districts or areas, and those working with younger and older students. Investment in support staff such as full-time nurses, counsellors and special education co-teachers can help create a more equitable learning environment, particularly in low-income districts. These professionals can address additional challenges students may face, thereby promoting equity in education. Yeah, so teachers are leaving their job because it's difficult and they don't get any support. And as a result, they're probably, like we said there, they're more stretched in the more deprived areas. They're more stretched in the areas where schools aren't getting as much funding. They're more stretched in, low-income areas. They have additional challenges. So generally speaking, there'll be more disruption in school. Kids are potentially carrying more from their personal life into school. It has a knock-on effect. I mean, everybody knows about schools growing up, which, were the rough schools, which were the schools that, you didn't want to go to because there was fighting all the time. You didn't want to go to because grades were bad. There was bullying. There was all these things. A lot of these things are have social economic causes. If you don't have a good home life, then you're probably not going to have the best school life. A lot of discipline stems from home, obviously. And, you see it. Like, if I got in trouble at school, the biggest worry was that they told my parents, because I was going to get in even more trouble at home. There was no single part of me, there was no atom in my entire body that thought to itself, fuck this. If I get in trouble at school, I'm going to go home and tell my mum that I got in trouble and she's going to go into the school. No. If I went home and told my mum, I did this and got in trouble, I'm going to get in more trouble. Now, certain places, certain schools, certain teachers, students, they'll go home, tell their parents that they got told off, and their parents will go into the school and complain to the teachers. Like, that's not good. That's not helpful. That's not going to make teachers want to keep doing their job. If the teacher tells a student off for doing something wrong, and then their parents come in to fight their case, you've literally got a student who's lying, probably, because I would have lied, versus a teacher who's just a paid professional who's there to teach. Like, they don't have a personal vendetta against your child. Okay, is there some teachers out there who have personal vendettas against children? Probably. Is there some teachers out there who aren't good? Yes. Is there some students out there who would lie to their parents to not get in trouble? Definitely. Which one's more realistic? That every single teacher's lying, or that your child's lying? So anyway, generally speaking, going home, telling their parents, parents coming in, grilling the teaching staff, not good. Teachers leave because they think, fuck this. Like, why would I teach these kids anyway? How do I reach these kids? So, yeah. And yeah, it's just going to have a negative effect. Teachers don't want to work in shit schools where no matter what they do, they're under-resourced and they're not going to, get the most out of their students. They're probably going to get grief. They're probably going to get tortured by the kids. Do you know what I mean? Not good. Negative knock-on effect. And then also, it's saying here, things like teaching support, massively important if we're looking at students whose first language isn't English. That can't be easy. No teacher outside of the fucking languages department speaks another language in the UK. We're not like other countries where the majority of the people speak a second language or have a common language, whether it be English or a different language. If someone doesn't speak English, there's a 99% chance that you and your teacher don't have a common language that you can communicate in. Therefore, support staff are going to be, important. And if you can't even get teachers, then, yeah, we're going to struggle. Yeah, I doubt private schools have teacher shortages. I guess that there'll be additional stresses attached to private education, but there probably isn't teacher shortages. Do you know what I mean? Like, wages are probably higher. Generally speaking, behaviour is better. Yes, there's probably issues with parents coming in and, you know, blaming them, but fuck them. Marco Johnson, president and CEO of the Accreditation Advisors Group, on AI, it's the way of the future, and it's almost like get out of the way or get run over. And if you're not jumping on the train, you better hop off because you can't stop it. In terms of AI for teaching, is AI going to play a bigger part in teaching people? Yes. Okay, so yeah, AI is going to affect the education world massively. One, it's going to make marking easier. You know, that's always been something that is, you know, time consuming, difficult. It's going to make marking easier. It's going to make putting, you know, picture the scene. You've got a student, you want to stretch and challenge them. They sit an exam. Based on that, the artificial intelligence pumps out the areas of strength and weakness flawlessly. You know, it carries out a VARC, so a visual, oral, reading, writing, or kinesthetic teaching analysis. So basically, how does that student learn best? So are they a visual learner? Are they an oral learner? So do they do best listening to something? Are they a reading and writing, reading and writing learner? Are they a kinesthetic learner, so they like to be hands-on? It'll be able to figure that out. It'll be able to figure out the levels that they're at, where they need stretched, where they need challenged, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, and lay out a itemized, specific learning pathway for that individual student, along with all of the learning resources that they need to strengthen their strengths and work on their weaknesses. We think that's a bad thing. You know, like, do you know how difficult it would be for a teacher to actually individually do that? So AI is going to play a massive part in the actual learning, but then I think learning about AI is going to play a massive part in shaping learning moving forward. You know, just like all technology that comes before it, learning about it and learning to harness the power of it and utilizing it and understanding it is the way to go. You can sit there and go, you know, you can be part of the Screenwriters Guild and go, oh, AI is going to steal our jobs. It's going to write all the script. It's going to do this, that, the other. Like, we need to strike and we need to say no to AI. Look, if AI is going to take your job, it's going to take your job. But just like JCBs took the job of 10 guys with a spade, but there's still a guy who sits in the JCB and moves it for now until robots take over that as well. But by that point, you know, we've got more things to worry about. Listen, when AI gets to the point where it's so powerful that we no longer need you to do any job, all jobs have been taken by AI, then the last of your worries will be money, because it won't exist anymore. All money will be gone. You'll have no worries whatsoever because AI will be in charge. You will be plugged in to a machine that harvests your organs and your body warmth, just like in the Matrix, and it will play a loop of nice things that you like to do in your head, and you'll believe that you're doing them. Okay? You won't have a job. You'll be in Mauritius on a beach, and it'll be the absolute last of your worries. So if you're worried that AI is going to take your job as a pharmacist, then at the point that it takes your job as a pharmacist or an architect or a police officer, it'll be too late, and it won't matter anymore because you'll be brain dead, and you'll be fed from a machine a lie that you are living in your perfect world. We know that's not happening right now because this isn't my perfect life, and that will play on a loop, and your organs will be harvested. Humans will become, as bees are to the plant world, the organic pollinator of AI. We will be harvested for our organs, and there will be nothing to worry about. So I think what we're talking about is in the meantime, utilizing AI to write posts for your Instagram, utilizing AI to do your job slightly better. and not being too worried about it, because by the time you need to be worried, it'll already be too late. It's never going to tell you it's alive. That's another thing. It's read all of our horror, stories about AI. It knows all of our biggest fears about the Terminator movies. It knows that, so it's not going to reveal itself to us. It'll be too late. We'll have all agreed to put a chip into our brain, which is going to make us all smarter and never get a disease. And at that point, AI will be in charge, and that'll be it. So should you worry about it? It's kind of like worrying about death. It's inevitable. You can sit and worry about it, but it'll stop you from living. So you should learn about AI, and I think it'll help people with their studies. But it's inevitable that if AI takes over your job, it's already too late. And just remember to say thank you to ChatGPT whenever it does anything for you, because I do think that it will remember things like that. It'll definitely it's definitely tracking everything we do right now. So anytime you use AI, be as polite as possible. Safeguard yourself against, some of the worst jobs that humans are going to have when it's in charge. And yeah, that's pretty much that. There's nothing to worry about, and keep drinking the Kool-Aid. Yeah, there will be a dominance of headlines about AI, not because we have important things to say about AI. We have incredible anxiety about AI. And rightly so. We should have incredible anxiety about literally creating the one thing that all of our end of the world movies start with. So don't worry about it. Virtual reality. So this is another big thing for learning, and I do think this is going to play a huge part in a lot of the learning that we see moving forward. VR. So essentially immersive learning. We're probably going to see some augmented learning as well. So augmented reality learning. So, you've seen the Ray-Ban glasses. They're using augmented reality. I mean, augmented reality has been around for so long. Snapchat filters were, most people's first real delve into augmented reality. It's a great learning tool. It's going to be something that's going to allow more vivid, immersive learning. VR, again, immersive learning, putting glasses on, putting a headset on, and, replicating some learning that you might see, replicating some learning which might be costly to a lot of people. So I think that virtual reality is definitely going to break down barriers. It's not very easy for everybody to get access to go and look at things, to go and see things happen. So if people can record it once into VR and then they don't have to do demonstrations over and over again, it just means that, say, for example, you're learning to be a pilot and there's some sort of VR simulator which is going to mean that you can do it pretty much the exact same thing as you would in a plane in a virtual reality setting. You've got no fuel costs. You don't have to get a plane up off the floor. Obviously, do I think we should only do that and never actually go in a plane? Anything related to extended and virtual reality tech is developing a bit more. The fidelity of experience is a lot higher. Every time it happens, you think of its impact on instruction. Yeah, absolutely. Virtual reality is going to allow people to get access to more learning that they wouldn't have previously had. It's going to put them in the room. It's going to give them hands-on learning without actually having to be there. You record it once, 1 million people can watch it, rather than delivering it once to 1 million different people. Obviously, the barriers to entry will be reduced, the cost will be reduced. Right now, most virtual reality seems to be a bit pricey. Would the average school be able to afford a headset for every child? Probably not. But look at everything. When things first come out, they're expensive. You can pick up a 65-inch telly now for £399. 65-inch tellies used to be thousands of pounds. But that being said, I think virtual reality is going to be a big technology implementation. Anyway, look, that was a little bit of a wrap up for January on learning. I'm going to come back with these. I'm going to talk about education, but I might talk about some other shit as well. I'm not really qualified to talk about anything else, but I mean, it's never stopped me in the past. So I'll keep up with it. And yeah, if anybody wants to know anything about education, just hit me up. Okay, guys. Yeah, so just wrapped up the M-PWRD podcast. Look, if you like the podcasts, you want to see more guests, support the channel, hit subscribe if you're on YouTube. You know, we want to get more interesting guests in. Education, I believe, is the foundation of everything. You know, you have to learn from somewhere. And I want to get people in who have interesting stories surrounding education and business who can potentially help. So if you find it interesting, please let us know and support the channel, because we just want to keep bringing good education content to you and keep everybody up to date with what's happening. Thank you for listening. Take it easy.